Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Now, I arrive in your earballs today with a confession to make. It's one of those things that shocks people to the very core. So are you ready for this? Your podcast host does not and cannot drive. For years, people have looked at me like I'm a madman for saying those words. But you know what? It's not hold me back at all. So I'm not sure what all the fuss is about. In the next few weeks, I'm off to Denver. March, Las Vegas with Adobe. April, Nashville. May, San Francisco, covering the biggest tech events in the world. But people say, but you need a car to go to the shops. And look at me bewildered when I say, well, I'll walk. Now, I may be techie, but I'm a little old school too. I also have a sneaking feeling that the concept of humans driving cars will be insane in just a few years, so maybe I'm just ahead of my time. But I have been a passenger in a car and chief navigator, and I typically fall back on the Waze app on my phone, like so many of you listening. And I've always loved how Waze is all about contributing to the common good out on the road too. All by connecting drivers to one another, they also help people create local driving communities that work together to improve the quality of everyone's daily driving. And that could just mean helping avoid the frustration of sitting in traffic, cluing people up about the next police trap, or shaving 5 minutes off that regular commute each morning by showing them new routes that they never even knew about. However, there is so much more to the company Waze that many of you probably realise, and I wanted to talk about that with them on the show today. So, buckle up. Hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to London so we can speak with former Googler Finlay Clark, who is now the UK country manager at Waze. And he's going to talk about the fantastic things that they're doing with technology at the moment that I don't think you're going to know about. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Finn. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
So thanks very much for the welcome. My name's Finlay Clark. Everyone calls me Finn, so feel free to use that. I am the UK country manager for Waze. So Waze is obviously the largest community of drivers in the world, all helping one another to outsmart traffic. We do loads of other things, which I'm looking forward to telling you about today. But my role at Waze is I was the first employee in the UK for Waze, and it's a pretty cross-functional role. So what we're doing is working with partners. We have many partners, people like transport organisations like Transport for London and broadcast partners who use our information on air. Second part of my job would be advertising. So we are monetizing the app and kind of trying to prove to advertisers that advertising on a map can be quite useful for their business. Another part of my job is around awareness. So actually telling people about Waze, marketing, PR. And then lastly is just to make sure that on the product side, we're building the app which works really well for UK drivers. So there are many, many hyper-local things which affect countries and regions all over the world, and we go really deep on driving. So I'm the kind of person championing internally for things that are coming to UK roads, whether it be things like ultra-low emission zones and things like that. So quite a wide varying job, keeps me busy and thoroughly enjoying it.
Now, most people listening, I think, will know what Waze is, and they'll think of it as a sat-nav app that sits on their smartphone, but also provides that real-time traffic congestion information. But what really interests me is that it's actually much, much more than that. And it's also used to make much more informed planning decisions to improve city infrastructure. Can you expand a little on how you see Waze, the problem it solves, and also what makes it unique from other apps and other solutions out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So at a very high level, I think we're changing from being a navigation app, an app that simply gets you from A to B in the most efficient route, to actually being a transportation company. We have one of the richest data sets of sort of real-time transportation information in the world. We give that to partners to tell people, to make informed decisions about the way cities run. And we are experimenting at the moment with our own end-to-end transportation service, Waze Carpool, which I can tell you a little bit about today. So I think the big change is how we move from just navigation to a more wide-encompassing transportation company. The second part of the answer is what makes us unique. So Waze was always built around this essence of community. And this is still what is the heart of what makes us different. So I'll give you an example. If you just drive with Waze on today, you are still part of our community. You are sort of sharing anonymous GPS traces with us. we're using that speed data to work out where the traffic is and help you with optimal routes. Second layer of community is people that make active reports. So these are people that actually either, tell people, hey, I'm stuck in traffic, there's been an accident, this road has been closed, whatever it might be. We get millions of these alerts a day, and that gives us a very rich real-time picture of what's happening on the road. And you can do all this with voice now, simply turn it on in the settings, and you can say, okay, Waze, report a traffic jam. And I always say to people, that sort of nice feeling you get when you let a car out at a junction. Yeah. This is like the digital equivalent of doing that, right? If you're in traffic, you're helping the person behind you. The third layer that makes us unique is we have roughly 500,000 map editors around the world who take it upon themselves to edit the Waze map in their own free time, telling us, oh, actually, this is now a one-way street in my area, and this is a new roundabout that's gone in. So we have these sort of super users who got real authority to publish changes to the map in real time. And this is a key reason why we really try and get an app that doesn't take you down the bridge that's closed. And then the last area that makes us unique is we do have partnerships with over 600 cities, transport authorities around the world who are getting direct API access, anonymous data that they're using to kind of make cities run quicker and more efficiently. And in return, they're helping us with things like, well, where is all the construction in London? It changes on a daily basis, roadworks information, all these things. So this is what makes us unique. We go really, really deep on driving. We don't do public transport. We don't do, hill walking, these types of things. We are only doing driving, And I think, if you use Waze and you drive a lot, hopefully you will see features in there which really kind of help you. I mean, driving is tough, right? It's one of the biggest drags on quality of life. It's bad for the environment. It's bad for your sanity. So we're like this crystal ball for driving, and you just trust us to get them the right way on any given time of day. So, a lot of the features you'll see in Waze, things like speed limits, speed cameras, planned drives, telling people, hey, I'm going there soon. What's the best time I need to leave? These are all features that we've put in recently to go really deep on driving, and really hard problems such as HOV, high occupancy vehicle routing, we launched at the tail end of last year. So obviously a lot of places around the world have certain restrictions on lanes which you can use if you, for instance, you have 2 people or 3 people, or you've got an electric vehicle. All of these things are quite tough, but we are supporting these in many big cities around the world. So, what we're trying to do is make driving easier and give people the quickest route.
Now, listening to you talk there, it really seems that you guys are using technology to provide a more proactive approach to road travel, where you avoid congestion rather than the traditional approach of just reacting to everything. I mean, was that always your aim with Waze?
Yeah, so the aim was really to build maps by people in the community, and have people have a way of just telling their neighbor, hey, I'm stuck in traffic, you should take the other way to work today. I mean, that was the very simple idea that came from the founders who started this project in Israel about 10 years ago. And of course it grew organically, and that was the most amazing thing, that actually people wanted to build these maps and wanted to crowdsource this information, the kind of same way that the world's biggest encyclopedia, Wikipedia, is built by lots and lots of people, and it's exactly the same thing as what Waze did with maps. I think, in terms of that proactive piece, I think I speak to a lot of people, and some of them say to me things like, I just put Waze on just in case there's something on up ahead. I know the route, and actually that's I'm checking it just to see that there's been no accidents or major things. And fundamentally, that is the emotional response we want. We want people to, every time they get in the car, to be thinking, Waze can be just that utility that will tell me, here's something that you need to know. And sometimes it might say, hey, the normal route is probably the best route, but there will be other times where we'll make serious changes to the routes to save you time. And actually, that's the magic moment that you will get. Sometimes we'll save you 5 to 10 minutes. Other times we'll save you significant amount of times by keeping you out of big traffic jams and things. And I think that's the thing. Like our ambition is, it's interesting. I live in London. And roughly half of UK drivers use a sat nav, or most people call them a GPS. But I think a lot of people don't use them all the time on the way to work. And yet, that's an average. The UK commute that we see in this country is about 45 minutes. And we know that we can save 5-10 minutes, which if you add that time up over the course of a month and a year, it's an awful lot of time. So I think in many ways, our competition is actually the person that just drives the same route every day. Actually, we could be helping them to sort of optimize that. And, over time, that makes a big difference to, the environment and people's sanity.
So from a technology standpoint, can you tell me more about what goes on under the hood or behind the scenes at Waze, and also that dynamic lean structure within Google?
Yeah, so Waze is quite interesting in the sense that it was acquired almost 5 years ago, and largely Google's response was, you guys are doing something really, really interesting. You're solving a big problem, which is congestion in urban areas. So we're obviously going to kind of fund you, and we, integrate in some ways, but largely we've benefited from actually still having quite a lot of independence within Google, which is great. So we're independent in the sense that we are Waze. We have our own brand. We have internally a lot of our own departments are kind of separate from Google. Things like our sales team, marketing, our PR, and actually that's worked out very well in the sense that Google's obviously got Google Maps, and there is some crossover there, and the apps do talk in the back end. We do share some information with them and vice versa. But fundamentally, there are very differences, and we have got different use cases. I would say Google Maps is your map for everything. Street view, walking directions, public transport, all the rest of it. We go really deep on driving. We only do driving. So that's a kind of clear difference. So I think, other things that, worth mentioning is just that, I still say to people, although we are, several hundred people now, Waze still feels like a startup. And we do kind of make decisions very rapidly. And I think that's something which, the founders and the senior management are very keen to try and retain. As we get bigger, and there's no doubt we are getting bigger, but fundamentally we still react very quickly. And a good example of that would be, when we did have those hurricanes last year, in America, we made a pretty significant, decision to kind of launch our Carpool product in areas affected in Texas and Louisiana, because, that was a real opportunity to try and, people needed transportation in this area because of an event. And I think that's the thing that, we made that decision in just over 48 hours with, and it was all hands on deck. And I think those are the kind of things that, even though we are obviously not a small band in a garage anymore, we're in part of Google, but we get the benefits of being a Google company, but we have actually retained lots of the kind of benefits of actually still being independent and being able to make decisions at speed for our users.
I do love how you're exploring other technology solutions as well at Waze. Can you tell me more about, for example, the Waze Beacons program? Because I think that is something that many people listening will not have visibility of, or even know that you're working with this beacon technology at the moment.
Yeah, so, one of our distinguished engineers, Gil, who's in Tel Aviv, which Tel Aviv is our, still the heart of our operation. Waze has had difficulties routing people when they're underground in tunnels, and he had this experience where he was driving, and Waze couldn't work. It couldn't tell him to get off the road at the right time. So he set upon himself on a personal mission to try and look at how we could get Waze working underground. So the idea that he worked upon was actually getting these beacons actually lined along tunnels, so that actually Waze would work underground. And this is something that, it started off just with a couple of pilots, and we're now rolling this out to a number of cities around the globe. But it's really interesting because, this is a very hyper-local issue. There's a certain number of tunnels in cities across the world where you have to make a turn-off. And if Waze is telling you something or not telling you something, and all of a sudden you're trying to change lanes at high speed, accidents do occur. So we're really trying to ensure that, when we work with city partners around the world, that we can provide solutions to this, because, we're working with them directly to try and minimize accidents. And something like having a simple beacon on the side of tunnels is a pretty inexpensive way of solving, these sorts of accidents that arise from issues of just simply not having GPS signal. So it's early days, but it's a classic example of whereby, because now we work with like 600 partners, cities around the world, doing sort of pilots like this are quite easy to roll out and then scale. So we're pleased that there's Waze Beacons in tunnels across the world right now, and helping people to make sure they take the right exit underground.
Now, you guys are also leading the way with Waze Carpool. Now, you did mention a few moments ago there that the app was a big hit in Texas and Louisiana after Hurricane Harvey wreaked havoc on locals. But can you tell me more about how it helped users during that period of devastation? It's fantastic what you guys did there.
It's probably worth mentioning that, Waze have been doing crisis response for many, many years. So, we've been asked in the past by the likes of FEMA, the sort of organization in America, the federal government, to help with crisis response for things like hurricanes and bad weather. And this is actually, now we're in this place where, the Waze community, all elements of our community, from our users, our map editors, the relationships we have with the cities themselves, allow us to play quite significant roles with, when there are these major traffic events or major, crises. So what we decided to do with Waze Carpool in Texas and Louisiana was, this is a product that we are rolling out. It is a separate app to Waze, and it is clearly a carpool app. So we're trying to connect drivers to riders and getting one of them to leave the car at home. And what we found was that, in the aftermath of these hurricanes, there was roughly 1 million cars that were sort of undrivable. So all of a sudden, you've got all these big populations and they need transport. And, what we decided to do was launch the app, offering free rides to people that were affected. And we launched it with the community, with all the traffic authorities in the area, to really get the word out. And we saw that our usage, last August was phenomenally high. The engagement was great. People were saying, thank you. You literally kind of helped me, not just kind of get out of the affected areas, because we had things like shelters. There was 154 shelters within Waze that people had put in, and 2,500 road closures. So when the hurricane was on, Waze was doing great to tell about 2.5 million people, here's what's happening. If you need shelter, here's what you need to do. And then afterwards, when people realized that they didn't have transport anymore, we were trying to provide an option there to tell people, hey, please carpool with one another until we get this situation fixed. And of course, it's situations like that where I think, we can be very quick at actually getting products launched and allow people to make a real difference to people. So, that's a good example of just, I guess, the role that we play during crisis.
So can you tell me more about how Waze Carpool works? I mean, what country it is available? And also tell me more about how riders who use the app can actually pay their driver for federal mileage rate in the US for the cost of their gas, and also the wear and tear of their vehicle. I mean, it's a fascinating concept, but how does it all work?
Yeah, absolutely. So we launched Waze Carpool 2 years ago in Israel. Israel is always our sort of test beta market. We've now rolled it out to the west coast of the US, so the Bay Area and LA. We launched it in obviously Louisiana and Texas, and now we're looking at Brazil as one of the next countries. So we're going carefully here because, fundamentally, carpooling's been around for 50, 60 years. And what we're trying to do is make a very, very seamless opportunity for people to effectively leave their car and find someone else that they can get in a car with. So we're all about fighting traffic at Waze. And what we realized with Carpool is that fundamentally, too many cars, not enough roads. So we need to try and take cars off the road. So, we're going gently with this. But what we're trying to do is be an option for users to effectively leave their car at home and drive with somebody else. It's not a taxi experience. It's very important to say, and it's a game of trying to match drivers. And sometimes it'll be a game of Carpool will be an option for people. It won't be always an option kind of late at night, because we're talking about commuting hours. So this isn't taxi drivers. These are people that are actually just going that way anyway. So that's the magic. So it's a separate app to Waze. And, what we're trying to do at the moment is sort of tell people, hey, this is a comparable to like a public transport option, that you could actually get the benefit of sort of using HOV lanes, of there being less traffic on the road. And obviously the real magic is if you were going that way anyway, then it's kind of free money. Yeah. Because obviously you've not really changed your behavior. You might be picking someone up or dropping them off, but we do that so that, we set it up so that you're picking up people who live and work quite near you. So that's the magic. We find that Wazers kind of want to do a bit of good for the world. They don't want to do too much, right? So, we're asking them to find this sort of way where you're connecting people that, live and work in similar areas. And we know that if we can just remove a certain number of drivers off the roads, 3 to 5% in urban areas at peak times, that would actually be enough to have sort of free-flowing traffic. So our advantage is that we've already got 100 million people around the world who use Waze every month. The trick is just trying to kind of get some of them to carpool, tell people about it. And obviously, this should be a way of being an option. Because I think young people today, what they need is transportation. They don't necessarily need cars. Young people are very accustomed to just pulling out a phone, pressing a button, and the car turns up. And I think, what we're trying to do is almost like the Airbnb model, but for empty car seats, because cars are still such an inefficient network. And we think we can optimize that and help make cities run a bit quicker.
Now, a few years ago, a 3-hour journey to the Glastonbury Music Festival ended up taking me 15 hours due to organisers closing off all the roads due to flooding. I mean, are you teaming up with more and more organisers now around the world to make travel to those big global events that little bit easier and get the message out to people better?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a global events program where we actually work with many of the sort of big stadiums and events companies around the world who, where we know there's going to be abnormal traffic for, whether it be a big football match or whatever, to actually tell people who are coming to that match, hey, Waze is the app that will show you where you can best park, when's the best time to arrive, these types of information. Because it can be very, there are so many hyper-local changes to road layouts when we have these big events. You need to have the information, the right information. A lot of the time, if you're relying on GPS or sat-navs, they're not going to have that. So by getting it directly from the organisers of the events, Waze is up to date. And in return, we're obviously telling the event organisers, right, we're getting their messages out to drivers right when they need it. So, we're working with many different partners around the world on this. And what's great is they can begin to leverage the data as well. So they can begin to see, where are people coming from and how far away and, where are they ending parking. And so it just basically allows these events organisers to know, how do I make sure that when people are driving to my event, they're getting the most up-to-date information. And it can go a long way to just making these things run a lot better when you've got thousands and tens of thousands of vehicles turning up. So, Glastonbury is an interesting one. I remember the one you speak about, 15 hours, and there are things like floods and things. I mean, there's absolutely no way that, those roads in Somerset and rural England were made for the amount of traffic that they get during that sort of week of the year. And I think sometimes where Waze can be really helpful in those instances is just telling people, hey, here's how long you're going to be stuck in traffic. And when you have that information, you can then begin to determine whether, well, actually, maybe I want to find accommodation or whatever it might be. But yeah, we want to be working with more organizations. If you're an organization and you think, right, I've got lots of people driving, please get in touch and we can try and work with you to be part of that global events program.
So can I also ask, how do you fund innovation at Waze? Because you're doing a lot of things here with a lot of different technologies. I mean, have you had to consider commercialising the app? And it's a very fine balance. How do you get that right if you do?
Waze decided 6-7 years ago, even before the Google acquisition, that we would have an ads-funded model on Waze. So we've been doing this for many years now, proving that ads on maps done at safe times throughout the drive can help businesses show up in front of commuters and tell them interesting things that are going on around them. So it's very early days, but we've got this app of 100 million people around the world. They're commuters, so they're going to and from jobs most of the time, which is an audience that people would like to reach. And we're the only screen in the car that people can kind of get a message to someone. So we have in-app advertising that's served to people at safe times. So our most popular ad unit is called the Zero Speed Takeover, and it's served when someone is completely stopped. So you can imagine, we do a lot of work with people like fuel companies and fast food and retailers. And I mean, you can imagine if you're driving along and you're low on fuel and you see an ad for Shell and they say, hey, we're just 2 minutes away, it actually can be a service. So we work very hard at trying to bring advertisers on who are telling our users things that are going on around them. And the good thing from the advertiser point of view is that, we aren't talking about metrics such as things like, CTR, click-through rate. We're actually talking about over time, we're proving to businesses that we're getting more people at their place of business because we're a GPS. So anonymously we can show, hey, we got more people into your business. And so they love it for that reason. So, I would say it's early days, but we're finding ways of kind of monetizing the app in a way which integrates into the experience and hopefully adds to the experience where possible. And I think most people are aware that they're getting one of the best GPS sat navs for free, and in return, occasionally they might see one or two ads, but if the ads are helpful in telling them things, then it's a decent trade-off. So that's how we think about it, and we think very carefully. But yeah, it's been a phenomenal growth to kind of bring more advertisers on and to prove that ads on maps work for many different types of advertisers.
You did mention that in many situations, yours is the only screen inside a car, and driver distraction is also a growing problem on the roads now. So how do you deal with safety at Waze?
Yeah, so safety is a really, really big area that we focus on with all of our features and product releases. So probably the main one that we launched last year is Talk to Waze. So this is a feature you can turn on in the settings, and all of a sudden, everything you do on Waze can be voice activated. So, okay, Waze is a hot word, and all of a sudden you can say, drive me home, or report an accident. So clearly we're a driving app, and we need to make it as seamless as possible for people to not have to touch the phone at all. Other safety features that we've launched, things like, if you and I were friends on Facebook and we both connected on Facebook and we were driving to the same place, Waze would automatically tell me, Neil's going to arrive at 2:10. So that makes no need for me to text you to say, hey, what time are you getting there? And this is all happening in the background. So we think about features that will help decrease the amount of time that you need for driver distraction and really only be telling you things that you need to know. So, we think hard about this. We inputted speed limits a year and a half ago to all major roads in the world. And we noticed that, just by having the speed limits there, people slow down when they know, because the icon goes red when you start going over the speed limit on Waze. So again, there's lots of things that we're doing, and clearly we work with many different transport authorities around the world as well to help them get information about accidents and things. So if you are reporting something, a lot of the time that being helpful to issue could be getting responded quicker because you've done that. So in transportation circles, we're seen as part of the solution and not part of the problem. But we have got lots and lots of new features that are designed to just let people just do it all with voice. And it's great to see that people love doing that. And voice technology is good enough now that it really works.
It's great to hear about how you're using technology in so many different situations there and improving Waze and helping it evolve and adapt. But what's your grand vision for Waze? Is there anything else that you can share with us today about that?
Well, I think that the grand mission at Waze is all about fighting traffic. Traditionally we help you outsmart traffic, save you 5-10 minutes a day. But the wider mission we're trying to work on is how do we actually end traffic? I mean, that's a really lofty goal, but fundamentally at the moment, we've got a huge community of people using our app every month to drive, and we can load balance and we can optimize, but there is actually a barrier to how far you can go with that. And I think what we're really trying to do is try and think about how do we take cars off the road. So this is why we're sort of almost launching our transportation as a service on the Carpool app, and also giving our data to lots of different organizations, because fundamentally we think that it's very unlikely anyone born today is going to need a driver's license. This is, you've got a change in the next 15 to 20 years where cars will move from being kind of assisted driving to, fully autonomous. People debate how long it's going to take, regulation and all the rest of it. But, I think what you're going to have in the future is you're going to have many, many different transport options. And whether it be someone driving, you driving, whether it be a robot driving, things are going to change. And I think the fundamental question is, how do we, driving is a very inefficient sort of network or at the moment, 80% of the time people driving, they're on their own. You'd never get on a flight where there was one seat and 4 empty seats. And yet we do it all the time in cars and think it's very normal. So, I think our vision is that in the future, there's going to be a ton of services, and moving things around, people or things, is going to be so much more cheaper. I mean, the cost of moving things and people around cities is going to reduce considerably. And, the time spent in vehicles can be much more productive. And even things like what cities can do with all this space. I mean, a great example is about 15% of LA is reserved for car parks. 15% of Los Angeles. That's huge, huge amounts of space. And, where it gets really interesting is, all of a sudden you don't need car parks anymore because cars are like this efficient network where they're, don't need to stop. What do you do with that space? Yeah. So I think, these are issues that are going to come to the fore. Transportation is a $1 trillion industry. It's traditionally not been, disrupted because it's obviously roads and infrastructure. But, I think there is a greater sense that technology and the way that it's progressing is going to allow lots of different regions and cities around the world to make smart experiments about how people and things move around cities. And, that's a really interesting place to be. I'm optimistic. I really think that, in the future, our kids will think it's mad that we let humans drive. I mean, that's, humans get tired and they get drunk and all these things. So, I think in the future, that's kind of where we're headed. I mean, people will still drive, it'll be on novelty, I think, for some people, but people will still drive. But obviously, I think where it becomes really interesting is what does that mean? What other services and things happen? How do cities change? So I think, Waze is in an interesting position because we have a role in that at the moment, and hopefully, we will keep building that and keep working so that people can use our data to help make experiments and do things like that in the future. So, yeah, interesting times ahead.
Absolutely. I think you've left so many questions in our heads now. But before I do let you go, could you remind the listeners of where they can find out more information about anything that we've spoken about today, or even reach out to your team if they've got any questions about Waze as a result of our conversation?
Most of our information is on Waze.com. If you're a city partner and you want to be getting Waze data for your city, the program is called Connected Citizens Program, so Waze CCP. If you are an event organizer, we have the Waze Global Events Program. So most of the stuff is on our website. There are inquiry forms that go to the right people in the company. Certainly, we are quite a responsive team. We want to have more partners, and clearly, we'd love to hear from some of your listeners if they think I've got a good idea how I could partner with Waze.
I love how Waze came on the scene now, and it began by empowering citizens with that real-time congestion information. And I think that's the way a lot of people perceive Waze, but it's much, much bigger than that. So a big thank you for coming on today and telling us all about how you're working with big global events, Carpool, and also beacon technology, and asking those big questions about the future of transportation. It's really opened my eyes up. I'm sure it has to everyone listening. So a big thank you for coming on today.
Thanks, Neil. Thank you.
I love how, in addition to the local communities of drivers using the app, Waze is also home of an active community of online map editors who ensure that data in their areas is as up to date as possible. But even then, we're only just scratching the surface. The Waze Beacons program is fascinating, and I love how the team have looked at how many seats are empty in cars out there that are all travelling to the same place every day and launched the Carpool feature. But more than anything, I love how they're really making a difference with technology and continuously adapting to the world around them. And I don't know about you guys listening, I will never look at the Waze app quite the same again, because I feel that I've learned so much more about the company behind it and their beliefs, and I hope you did too. But hey, why not let me know? As always, tweet me at Neil C. Hughes, send me a quick email to techblogwriter@outlook.com, or equally record a virtual voicemail, send me a question, or access any of the podcast episodes over at my site, techblogwriter.co.uk/podcasts. And remember, as we race towards 500 episodes, we are available on iTunes and Spotify. So you can ask Alexa to play the podcast if you wanted to. And we're also on Stitcher and TuneIn Radio too. There's literally no escaping from me. So a big thank you to Finn from Waze for coming on and sharing the Waze story with us today. And an even bigger thank you to each and every one of you for tuning in every day. So keep those messages coming in, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.